Welcome back, students. This is your Dean, CountXevious. Today I'm going to do two typings and go a little bit more deep dive into these two typings and their play in the Vortex Cup meta. The two typings that I will be covering is dragons and one of the best known counters for dragons, the ice types. The dragons I will be covering are Zweilous, Dragonair and Dragonite. The ice types that I will be looking at is going to be Sealeo, Lapras, Froslass and Dewgong. Let's start with one of my most favorite typings in Pokemon Go, and that's the dragon typing. Which is the king dragon for this Vortex Cup meta? It is going to be Zweilous. Zweilous beats Dragonair and Zweilous also beats Dragonite. It's because of the fact that Zweilous is very, very bulky. It gives an edge against all the other dragons. The matchup between Dragonair and Dragonite is a bit iffy. For example, I think if you have a really high stat product Dragonair going up against a very high stat product Dragonite, Dragonair wins, and there's a lot of scenarios that this can play out. So in a way, they're both equal, but then it depends on your IVs how you're going to come out of this matchup. First off, let's start with how our dragons do against the fighting types. The King Dragon has a very, very bad time because it's hard countered by the counter of these fighting types. The Dark type of Zweilous takes super effective damage from fighting type moves, and unfortunately this puts it at a really, really bad place. Dragonair, on the other hand, loses to Toxie, Machoke and Primeape in the one shields, but can pick up Blaziken in the one shield because of it having access to Aqua Tail. I think it can also pick up the Blaziken in zeros, and I'm not sure about the twos. The King Dragon against counter users is going to be a Dragonite. Why? Because of its part flying. Suddenly, the counter is not super effective or neutral anymore. It is resisted, and Dragonite just powers through the fighters. Dragon types versus the grass types. The grass that we're going to be looking at is going to be Venusaur and Ferrothorn. Conventionally, Ferrothorn is supposed to do very well against the dragons, but it's going to be dependent on whether you're going to run Flash Cannon. Here, I've looked at it with having access to Thunder. So Zweilous picks up Venusaur and Ferrothorn if you land the Body Slam bait and then hit the Dragon Pulse, the Dark Pulse on the Ferrothorn. Dragonair, on the other hand, loses to Venusaur and loses to Ferrothorn. The Ferrothorn can go straight Power Whip to pick up this win, unfortunately. This is mostly because of the fact that Dragonair, having Aqua Tail and Dragon Pulse, doesn't really have a lot of neutral play against the Ferrothorn. Dragonite picks up both Ferrothorn and Venusaur very convincingly. How do the dragons fare against the flyers? The dragon of choice to play against flyers is going to be your Zweilous. Zweilous picks up Pelipper, Mantine, Mandibus and Drifblim in the one shields. This is pretty impressive considering the fact that Drifblim, for example, has access to Icy Wind, but Zweilous is still so bulky that if you land the Dark Pulse, you just win. Mantine, even if you go straight Bubble Beam, Ice Beam, it's going to be a very close matchup in the one shields, but you still pick it up. A wing attack Mantine can pick up Zweilous in the zeros and ones. I'm not sure. I will drop it down in the comment below, just in case if you guys were curious. And Dragonair, on the other hand, has a much more difficult time against the flyers. It can pick up Pelipper, but it loses to Mantine, Mandibus and Drifblim. Dragonite, on the other hand, can pick up Pelipper, but loses to Mantine even if the Mantine goes straight Ice Beam. Mandibus is a bait dependent matchup in the sense that you need to bait the Mandibus with Dragon Claw and then land the Hurricane. What's questionable is that you both get to Hurricane and the Foul Play at the same time. So if it sneaks a Snarl when you're trying to throw your move, you will lose that matchup. Drifblim just beats Dragonite because of its access to Icy Wind, and Icy Wind I think one-hit KOs a Dragonite at this CP range. Okay, Dragon types versus Mud Boys, semi-Mud Boys. I don't even know how to call Diggersby, but Whiscash is a Mud Boy. So here is a very, let's say, very straightforward. All of these are bait dependent matchups. The Diggersby needs to land the Earthquake, the Whiscash needs to land the Blizzard. So as long as they manage to do it, they win. If they don't, you shield their nuke, you pick up the win. So basically, it's in the one shield, it's very bait dependent. So it depends of you calling the bait or not. What you can also do in some scenarios is that if they go Mud Bomb, you get the bait, shield the next one, get the Blizzard on your shield, and farm down the entire. For example, you can farm down the Whiscash. So Dragon types against the Electric types. This is, let's say, semi-favorable matchups for the Dragons. But unfortunately for Zweilous, it loses to Galvantula because the Galvantula is a part bug and has access to Lunge. The Lunge not only is super effective, but also debuffs your Dragon Breath and Body Slam damage. So Galvantula beats Zweilous, Raichu loses to Zweilous, and Magnezone loses to Zweilous if the Zweilous can bait with the Body Slam and then hit the Dark Pulse. Dragonair, on the other hand, can pick up all three of the Electric types because Aqua Tail comes really fast, and that really helps. And against Raichu, you can also go straight Aqua Tail for the win. Dragonite, on the other hand, loses to the Spooder. Yeah. Dragonair, on the other hand, loses to the Spooder, loses to Alolan Raichu, and also to the Magnezone. Why? Because unfortunately, Dragonite is not bulky enough in the Great League to survive the Volt Switch plus the Wild Charge damage that's gonna inadvertently come off the Raichu. So, speaking of Ice types, and them being the biggest threats to the Dragon family, let's get into how the Dragons do against the Ice types. Here's a hint: very bad. Zweilous loses to 3 out of the 4 Ice types. The only matchup that it picks up is Lapras in the one shield if you land the Body Slam bait and then land the Dragon Pulse. This is going to be a little then land the Dark Pulse. I'm sorry. This is going to be a little bit more difficult if the Lapras is running Ice Beam. If it is not, then you can pick it up in the one shields by landing the Dark Pulse. Dragonair loses to all the Ice types except for Froslass. This is it's very similar to Froslass versus Venusaur because their attack stat is very close to each other. This means that you get to the Aqua Tail at exactly the same time as Froslass gets to the Avalanche. So whoever wins CMP wins the game. So you have to choose whether you want an attack weighted Dragonair or an attack weighted Froslass to stop this from happening. Dragonite, on the other hand, does so bad against the Ice types. Dragons are weak to ice, but unfortunately so is flying. So it's gonna take a lot more damage from the Ice types than the other dragons. And hence it just loses, it gets absolutely destroyed by the Ice types. We now know that the dragons get destroyed by the Ice types, so let's go and check out the Ice types. The Ice types are in the order that Sealeo is the top Ice type. Why? Because Sealeo can beat Lapras, Sealeo, if it lands the Water Pulse, can beat Froslass, and Sealeo just outspams the Dewgong, even though the Dewgong is consistently debuffing it. The Body Slam spam is way too good. As we did with the Dragons, first we're going to look at how the Ice types are going to do against the fighting. Hint, not very good. Sealeo, Lapras, and Dewgong lose to all the fighters, unfortunately. The only saving grace for the fighters, for the Ice types here is the Froslass. Froslass can pick up Toxicroak, Machoke, and Primeape. The only loss Froslass has against the fighters is the Blaziken. What you must also note is Froslass versus Primeape is IV dependent. Here, rather than the previous case, you need high stat product Froslass to pick up the Primeape. So you need to pick your poison if you want to beat Dragonair or do you want to beat Primeape. Primeaps are in much more teams, so I would personally try to run high stat product Froslass. After the fighters, we're going to see how the ice types will do against the grass types. Ice is super effective against grass, but unfortunately ice does not resist grass. And what's even unfortunate is that the ice types we have except Froslass are part water. So the grass types are going to do super effective damage to the ice types in this meta, or neutral damage to Froslass. So in essence, Sealeo loses to Venusaur Ferrothorn, Lapras loses to Venusaur Ferrothorn. Lapras and Venusaur is a very close matchup. It's all about the Lapras sneaking in one Ice Shard. If you play it right, you will win this game as the Venusaur. If you play it right, you will win the game as Lapras. It's all up to you. Froslass wins Venusaur and Ferrothorn exactly the same as Dragonair. Froslass Venusaur is IV dependent. Basically, it's going to come down to who has the higher attack stat. You have to choose. As I said, you have to pick your poison. If your team is weak to Dragonair, Venusaur, put in an attack weighted Froslass. If your team is weak to Primeape, put in a high stat product Froslass. That's all I can say. Dewgong also in the end loses to Venusaur and Ferrothorn. Yes, Icy Wind comes faster than Frenzy Plant, but Frenzy Plant is so good that it's going to take out the Dewgong before it can get to the third Icy Wind. Right. Next up, Ice types versus the Flyers. This is where Ice types really shine, in the sense that they are either doing neutral or super effective. Their Ice types are doing neutral damage with their ice moves against Pelipper and Mancine. Why? Because they are both part water. This means that even though flying ice is super effective against flying, it becomes neutral because of the water type. Sealeo beats Mantine, Mandibus and Drifloon. Pelipper can play this out in the sense that it can land the Hurricane for the win, but it is still going to be a very close matchup. Lapras beats Mantine, Mandibus and Drifloon. Similar story versus Pelipper. If the Pelipper lands the Hurricane, it can pick up the win. Why? Because Pelipper has a really high attack stat. Hurricane is a really good move, and ice or water does not resist flying moves. Froslass has the most convincing wins against the Flyers, picking up all of the Flyers. Froslass Mandibus is again going to be in the sense an IV dependent matchup. If you have a really high stat product Mandibus, rank 1, you can pick up the Froslass no one shields. I'm not exactly sure, but I think you need number 1 a defensive bulk point at 152.7, and you need 1 or 2 extra HP to pull off the Froslass win. So if you have a rank 1 Mandibus, like you just got like extremely lucky by trades, just run it. You will surprise so many people. Dewgong again does so well against the Flyers. Yes, the Pelipper can land the Hurricane, but by the time the Pelipper baits the Weather Ball and gets to the Hurricane, it's already going to be double debuffed, and it's not going to hurt you as much anymore. As you might know, the Ice types do very well against the ground types. Ice is super effective against ground, and all the Ice types beat all the ground types very convincingly. The only matchup that you have to, let's say, be careful about is Froslass going up against Whiscash. This is an IV dependent matchup, so again, like previous, you need to pick what kind of Froslass you want to run in this meta. Because the really high stat product Froslass picks up the Whiscash, but a very bad stat product Froslass loses to the Whiscash. So pick your poison, like I told you before. Last but not the least, the Ice types versus the Electric types. Why is this important? Because the Ice types unfortunately are mostly part water. So all the Ice types lose to all the Electric types. Frostlass Galvantula is going to be CMP dependent, so maybe if you get lucky and you land and you sneak one Powder Snow, or you swap in and they counter swap you into a Galvantula, you can pick up that matchup. Dewgong loses to Galvantula, Dewgong loses to the Raichu and also the Magnezone. Magnezone also has an added play against Froslass. By having access to steel attacks, you can have Mirror Shot or Flash Cannon if you want to be really flashy and then take out the Froslass in one go. Or you can just shield bait with Mirror Shots and still do super effective damage to the Froslass. So yeah, there you have it, guys, your deep dive into the Dragon and the Ice types. I really hope you liked it, and if you have more questions, please drop down in the comment section below. If I missed something or if I said something wrong, I'm more than happy to be corrected. With that said, please do like, share and subscribe. Before I go, in the description there's a tournament. It's super stacked. Come join us. There's a really cool trophy at the end. Ciao.